I've encountered all sorts of unusual beings through the ages, but you, little hunter, are something truly unique. Your very existence is against the rules.
Your words are meaningless to me, demon.
You'll come to understand me in time. They always do.
Imagine the sins they were guilty of to deserve that.
Trust me, the title of this video ain't lying. This really is just Marvel's version of Mass Effect. You'll see what I mean pretty quickly. This game caught my attention around, I believe, the Summer Games Fest last year. I was decently excited about it simply due to it being a pretty cool looking Marvel game, and I'm a comic book fan, so naturally that'll get me interested. But then it came out, and I heard almost nothing about it. I didn't hear about any reviews, any general consensus, no drama, nothing save for an escapist video. For a while, I wasn't even aware that it came out. I was debating whether I actually enjoyed the core gameplay or not, but eventually I stuck with my purchase and ended up with a pretty interesting overall experience. An experience that I now get to detail to you all spoiler-free in this here review. So, let's get on with it, shall we? This is Midnight Suns.
With my spider roots, and the spiders being so occult adjacent, apparently, who knew, I can maybe be a good fit for the Midnight Suns. I'm not asking you to pull any strings for me or anything like that. I just want your honest opinion as a friend. Do you think I'd make a good candidate?
For now, you should focus on being the best you can be in every situation. And when this is all over, we can talk about your future.
The game is rather loyal to the comic looks of the heroes and villains, something I honestly didn't expect given how much Marvel wants to make their stuff look like the MCU nowadays. But I very much prefer this over the MCU looks, as I feel those are usually very over-designed in an attempt to make their costumes look more realistic as combat suits, giving them a bunch of lines and dots and extra little things that just mess up a distinct look. Here, on the other hand, it's just their plain old costumes. You can unlock alternate costumes, but that's mostly DLC stuff, save for the big Midnight Suns themed costumes that are saved for the very end. Other than that, it's all just recolor type stuff. The environments are nice, nothing insanely great to look at, but they're pretty. And it can be fun to run around the Abbey grounds and take in the scenery, finding little secrets here and there. One issue I found, however, is that the textures pop in a lot. Now, I'm not running the most powerful rig around, but I can still run most modern games, with sensible requirements anyway, without much issue or pop-ins. It just seems to be a thing with this game's optimization, or lack thereof, that's causing it, which can look weird at times. And finally, the music and sound design aren't really anything to write home about, but I found the voice acting to be rather endearing for the most part. Yuri Lowenthal is back to voice Peter Parker, and I honestly think his voice is perfect for the character. I can't hear anything other than him at this point when I read Peter Parker. William Salyers? Salyers? How do you pronounce that? I don't know. Is also here voicing Bruce Banner, but he did so little to change his voice that I can't help but think of Doc Ock whenever he's talking. And on the note of characters talking, let's move on to...
It's not just the Southwest. Look. A rise of Hydra movement in Eastern Europe.
Are you seeing...
Holy disturbance in the Force!
Not too holy from the feel of it.
Quite the reverse.
Oh!
Wake up, kid. If you're getting this, well, we gotta have us a little conversation. Ghost Rider to Ghost Rider.
The story of Midnight Suns is this weird sort of half and half when it comes to being related to the comics. You play as a character simply known as the Hunter, a character who seems to be entirely made up as a self-insert for the game. The Hunter is the 300-something-year-old child of Lilith, a human witch who became corrupted by the power of an ancient elder god known as Chthon, who actually is a real Marvel villain, though he manifests in the comics a little differently than in-game. The Hunter managed to temporarily defeat Lilith 300 years ago, but it killed them in the process, prompting their aunt to take them and seal them away in a coffin until time comes in which they can and should be revived so as to finish the job. And that's where the game starts. The Hunter is revived by their aunt whilst in the presence of the modern version of the supernatural hero group the Midnight Suns, also an actual comic thing. Over the course of the game, you recruit more heroes to your cause, from Wolverine to Spider-Man to Captain America and more, all coming together to stop this demon apocalypse from happening. Now here's where I say the story is a little weird. The world of Midnight Suns is very much based on the comic book universe, there's no doubt about that. But the presence of the Hunter and their family means that everything is just a little different to give some of the established heroes some history with them. So in some places it feels almost like a vague fan fiction of the Marvel Universe that's still obsessed with doing everything it can to be loyal to the canon. But aside from that, the story itself is decent enough as it is. It's pretty typical by comic standards: fight the demons, recruit the heroes, fail a few times, self-sacrifice wins the day, that sort of thing. The interesting parts story-wise are the characters. Despite the writing being really cheesy at times, I found myself really enjoying watching the character interactions within the group. Sometimes you'll be planning your next big story mission, and other times you're sitting around talking about random innocuous things like comics or fashion. It's how you learn that Blade is fully aware that his costume isn't necessarily the most practical, but he wears it because he knows he can rock the look. All these little moments of small talk and bits of inter-hero drama end up actually being really endearing bits of character development to me, and it made me far more attached to the story than a lot of other games I've played lately. I actively wanted to complete story missions just to see what else happens, not because I thought there'd be some big twist, but to see how the characters each take it all. And on the note of missions, let's move on to the gameplay.
If we can install Carol's script on those consoles, it will do the hard work for us. Assuming we can keep Hydra from blowing up the server first.
Got it!
That wasn't bad.
The gameplay of Midnight Suns is weird. It's this odd hybrid between a card game and a tactical RPG. You play as a group of 3 characters trying to complete an objective on the relatively enclosed map space you have for your arena. Sometimes you're fighting goons, sometimes you're defending an object, you're destroying an object, etc. I wasn't sure whether I liked this gameplay system initially, but I found it grew on me over time. Each character has a small deck of cards that serve as their abilities that you can use in combat, and the decks of each hero you brought get combined into one deck you draw from at the start of your turns. Each hero has their own specializations, like how Blade benefits from applying bleed, Wolverine is all about chain attacks, Strange likes to use buffs and debuffs, etc. Even your character can be built to be more aggressive or supportive depending on whether you apply yourself more to the light or dark meter, a sort of Paragon Renegade system with a few more gameplay implications like card choice. Again, I wasn't sure at first, but once you really dive into it, you can find some pretty nice combos that help you take out an entire wave of enemies in 1 or 2 turns, which does mean that you can potentially steamroll the final fights at the end. But that's just proof of how well you've done, I suppose. It's an interesting system, and the fact that you can also combo off with pieces of the environment is great too. Blowing up canisters, throwing debris around, knocking high health enemies off cliffs. The developers thought of a decent number of ways you can make use of your limited space. Though I will also add, the game is not the best from a technical standpoint. Changing locations can cause a lot of stuttering as the new locale is loaded in every time, and I'm not sure the devs accounted for how many characters and particle effects were going to be on screen during the final boss fight, because the frame rate really started to chug by the end there. But aside from that, they've designed a decent little system, and overall I think it went well.
I don't get close to many people. I never get into relationships. That's not a rule I ever break. But I did with Carol. Beyond all the reasons, I find her amazing. Do you know why?
You are into her because she can kick your ass.
That's exactly it.
Really? I was joking.
I'm not.
And those are my thoughts on Midnight Suns. Honestly, I didn't really think I'd get as deep into it as I did, but here we are. It turned out to be a decently charming, if not always technically stable kind of game. Very AA, I guess. There were a few hiccups here and there, mostly with stuttering and loading, but the core design is actually pretty nice. My personal standout thing, however, is still the characters. It's a nice mix of fanfiction and comic loyalty that leads to some endearing and silly little moments, like Blade starting a book club so he can get it with Captain Marvel, and the plan actually working. This has been TheRatMan, and I will see you all later.